Hello, everyone. Welcome to Figure Out What Fits. Let's get right into it. I'm Scott Barlow of Happen to Your Career. And today I want to tell you a little bit about my promise to you and what we're going to cover. And there's a couple of different things that I want to make sure that you come away with as we go through this. One is I want you to have some tools, three specific tools, in fact, where you can figure out what your strengths. And we're going to spend some time focusing on what we call signature strengths. So I'll tell you a little bit about that and how you can figure them out. And then we're going to focus on identifying what it is that you really want. This is critical and it's absolutely important and for you to be able to make your decision and be able to move forward. And that's the third thing that we're going to talk to you about. And specifically, one thing that nobody else really does that's stopping them from moving forward that you can do to be able to make that happen. So if you want to go ahead and get signed in the chat, can everybody hear me? I'm going to go ahead and keep going now. Who is this workshop for? This workshop is for you if you have a good job, but you just can't see doing it forever. And you don't really understand what opportunities are out there for you. Or maybe you just can't wait to get out of your job tomorrow and you're completely overwhelmed. You don't understand what the options are or how to make that happen. Or maybe you're just not 100% sure of what you want to do and really just not sure how to match up your skills or strengths to your what opportunities are actually out there. And that's where a lot of people are, in that place of overwhelm. And maybe if you're in a place where you want to make a career change and you're just not sure how to get started, not sure where to begin, then this workshop is completely for you. So I want to tell you a little bit about what led me up to this workshop. 10 years ago, I got married to my high school sweetheart, and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do in college. I was one of those people that I changed majors 7 or 8 times. It was an awful lot. And eventually I landed in business, and just out of school, when I graduated, I took my first professional job. It was something that was available to me, and I thought, why not? And apparently that's what you're supposed to do when you get married for some odd reason. You're supposed to go get a job so you can, support your spouse and everything else. And I got into that job and I found out that I didn't like it very much. I didn't like it very much at all. It wasn't a bad job. It paid pretty well. And my friends and family thought it was pretty great from the outside looking in, but I knew that I didn't want to do it forever. And okay, let's be honest. I actually really hated it. It wasn't a good fit for me at all. And 1 year into the job, I got brave enough to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, this was the wrong job for me. And I didn't want to be dishonest with my boss. I didn't want to, go around behind his back or anything like that. And so I told him that I was having second thoughts. And apparently he was too, because 3 weeks later he fired me. And it was right at that time, and he should have fired me. But it was right at that time that I decided I never again wanted to do work that I didn't like and I couldn't be great at. And it was about after 2 or 3 days of moping around and feeling sorry for myself that I set about the business of figuring out what on earth it really was that I wanted. And I ended up making a career change to HR. Identified that this is something I wanted to do, and even though I didn't have any resume experience or job title experience, and I kept learning more and more about what I wanted, and then eventually actually made several other career changes too. But honestly, if you would have asked me, 4 or 5 years ago, what I wanted, I probably would have told you that I wanted to be an HR VP in talent management or organizational development or something like that. And the only problem was that even though I would tell people that, and I did tell people that, it, I knew deep down it really just didn't seem to fit me. I really just felt like I had to have a direction because that's what everybody wants you to have, right? And especially in some of the companies that I had worked with. They want you to be proactive. They want you to have a direction. And this was a major problem really because I mean, doing anything that someone else wants me to do or doing something that I'm supposed to do, and you can't see my air quotes that I'm making, but that's a major problem, right? So again, after I realized this, I set out to learn what it was that I really wanted. And for a couple of years, and at that point in time, people had been asking me to go to coffee like again and again and again. And they'd heard, people like worked with, friends, etc. They'd heard about some of the career changes that I'd made. And here's kind of how the conversation would go is be like, hey, I've got this friend who's an accountant and he hates it, but he really wants to do something in operations management. Would you go have coffee with him? And I was like, well, I like coffee. So I would go and I would have coffee with them and I would meet up and I'd give them career advice. And then, I found that I actually had something valuable to offer. And eventually people started sending me thank yous and then gift cards and then offering to pay. And several years later, when I was going through all this and trying to figure out what it was that I wanted, I thought, hey, there might actually be something to this. And that actually led me to go through the process and identify what it was that I want. And then, after I did that, I negotiated some telecommuting time with my boss and actually started Happen to Your Career on the side of my HR role. And after I got that up and running, we started actually a podcast, and we kept getting, as people were finding out about us, we kept getting the same email again and again and again about struggling to figure out what it was that they actually wanted. And I'd already been, I was thinking, hey, I've already been doing that for years for myself, and helping other people, just meeting over coffee, do that exact same thing. So put together a free email course. And I quickly realized, as we had more and more and more, and had the first couple hundred people go through the email course, I realized that people wanted and needed more help. A lot of people needed more help than the self-paced email series. And that's what leads us up to today. And that's why all of you are here. You want to get that clarity so that you can start moving forward, knowing full well what you want. Because when you know what you want, you can actually be like Kevin, who we worked with in the past. And Kevin, I did some coaching with him, and he realized that, here's exactly the type of roles that I wanted. And he needed to make a job change fairly quickly. And he knew that, and he knew the amount of pay he wanted. He knew all of these other things. And we talked through that the very, very first time we sat down to talk about it. And then, since he had all that clarity, it was very, very easy for him to make that change. When you know what you want, it becomes increasingly easy to just walk down the path. And he did it in 30 days after that. Found he got actually a couple of job offers to be able to choose from. Or people like Maggie. Maggie, when we started talking to her, she really had no clue what she wanted to do. And I'll never forget her quote. She told me she was so over her job. And she wanted to make a career change, but just really had no idea what was going to be a good fit, and really didn't know how to figure it out. So we helped her do exactly that. And she made this amazing career change because she decided she wanted to be in the learning and development space, and the training space. And since deciding that, she actually made that career change in a couple of months. She didn't have any of that experience. I mean, she just quite frankly didn't. But what she did do is she became very, very clear that that's where she wanted to go, and started looking how she could get there, and was able to. Or like Andrew, as an example, Andrew already had a good job. He actually liked his job quite a bit, but realized, after I talked to him, that he wanted to have the opportunity to do a very similar job with a premier company. He wanted that experience. He wasn't entirely sure whether it was going to be good or bad, but that's one of the things that he was going to regret if he didn't if he didn't have that experience in his life. Not that resume experience, that's not what I'm talking about, but that type of experience. And was looking for what lined up there. And he eventually actually ended up getting a job offer with Amazon, and a 25% increase to boot, which made him very happy. So I want you to be able to do the exact same thing, because in every situation that I just talked about, Andrew, Maggie, Kevin, they all had to figure out what they wanted. It didn't just happen. you know, and this sounds like an obvious step, but virtually nobody does this. And instead, people usually aren't looking ahead to what they want. You're usually like, well, I'm working 10 hours a day. I'm stressed out. My boss just doesn't get it. So I want a job that doesn't have those things, or I want to start a business that, doesn't have all that and has a, flexible schedule or whatever. Um, And that's how most people are looking at it. So to understand how this actually works and actually needs to work, I want you to think about this career change, this identification process of what it is that you want, like a puzzle. And you know, if you've got little kids or if you love puzzles, you're totally going to get this. And even if you hate puzzles, you'll still be like, oh, that's why it's so hard to figure out what I want to do. Ah. So when you're building a puzzle, there's an extremely efficient way to put it together, and there's a not so efficient way. And you can start if you want to do it the not so efficient way, you can start in the middle and just grab at random pieces, trying to put them together. But guess what? If you do that, you're going to get frustrated pretty quickly when you don't get very much traction and you can't figure out how to get very many of the pieces together. And that's just reality. And that's kind of what happens with your career too. If you don't understand what some of those pieces are that you want and they don't go together very well, then you just sort of get fed up and you don't do anything, which is, as I say it, it sounds ridiculous to all of you and it sounds ridiculous to me too, but that's kind of how it works in reality. So, um, I want you to think about this puzzle concept though, and instead, here's how to do it the right way. The way that we help people walk through this process is I want you to start with the corner pieces first. And those are your strengths. And your strengths are particularly important because that's what's going to make you successful. That's what you can, be great at. And that's what's going to allow you to be able to make not incremental job moves, but instead it's going to allow you to make very, very drastic job moves to things that you really want to be doing, whatever that is. Now, and then after you've got these corner pieces, which are mandatory, then you've got to be able to collect all the edge pieces. And those edge pieces, you just like in the puzzle, it's very easy to identify what those are, and they help set the frame for the entire puzzle. Because you can't start filling in the picture until you've got the frame, or you can, but you're going to get frustrated, like we just talked about. So, collect all those edge pieces, and then that's really focusing on what it is that you want and what it is that you need in your life and in your work, because the rest of your life is completely impacted by your work, whether you like it or not. And we could argue this all day about work-life separation or whatever along those lines, work-life balance, blah blah blah, but you can't get away from the fact that a lot of your life can be dictated by your work, and that's just reality. So only once you then have those corner pieces and that frame of the puzzle, those edge pieces put together, then you can start building out the picture, those possibilities. And it becomes much, much easier to be able to do it that particular way. Because, and here's something else to think about too. You don't even have to have all the center pieces filled out. You can actually start moving forward without even having 100% of the pieces. You just have to have enough to see what the general picture looks like. And then you can start doing some pretty amazing things. And, if I was building my kids love puzzles, so I was building some puzzles the other day, and could quickly tell that, hey, this is a picture of a Disney character, it's a Disney princess, and that Disney princess could be able to tell that before we got the entire thing together. And it works very much the same for your career. Before you get 100% of those pieces put together and 100% of the picture built out, you can start moving forward as long as you've got a general idea what that picture actually looks like. So there's how to think about it, frame it up as that puzzle and how to put this together. So we start with that strengths. And just like I said before, the strengths are particularly critical because you're going to be successful not by minimizing your weaknesses and not by putting, making incremental moves with the things that you're not so great at. Instead, what you're going to be able to make drastic moves with, and how you're truly going to be successful in your career or your life, is by focusing on those things that do come naturally, those things that are, when developed over time, you can be very, very good at. And we've got something that we call signature strengths. And we didn't invent the term, but we made up a definition around it. Signature strengths specifically to us are those things that, when you are doing them, time passes, you don't even notice it because it comes so naturally. Those things that are authentically you, those things that when mastered over a long period of time, you can become one of the best in the world at. And, that might sound funny. You might be like, Scott, I'm not going to be the best in the world at anything, but truly, what happens for most people is they just never even get the opportunity. They never even really understand what those things could potentially be for themselves. So we want you focusing on these strengths. This is what is going to take you all of these different places. Plus, turns out, your signature strengths particularly are also things that you really enjoy doing. Funny how that works, right? So that's why strengths. So here's one of the tools. I promised you that I'd give you 3 tools. Now this tool is particularly simple. This is why I chose it. It's very, very simple. You could do it. I mean, you could do it right after we get off this workshop if you wanted to. But I mean, all you need to be able to do this is a pen or pencil and a piece of paper. It's that easy. And you've got all the rest of the information in your head. Now, this is something I've run through with many, many, many people, but I really like it just because how effective it can be, even if you're working through it by yourself. So we call it the past jobs exercise. Now, here's how it goes. You're going to, first thing, you're going to just list out all your jobs. So all those things that, or maybe even some of the projects or other things they might have done, not on a professional level too, but you're going to list all those things out. And then you're going to literally take it job by job and you're going to list out what are those things that I really, really liked? What are those things that I really enjoyed, that I gravitated to? What are those for that particular job? And, stay with me here because it might sound, you might not fully get it, why this works, but I'll explain it in just a second. So once you get those things listed out, then you can start digging a little bit deeper. And then you can say, okay, so I really enjoyed the type of customer interaction that I had when I was at Target. This might sound odd, but when I'd actually be out in the store and I'd be working or helping, I wasn't very good at it, but when I was helping behind the customer service desk, that's something that I enjoyed. Does that sound a little bit ridiculous? Probably, but that is something that I enjoyed. So why did I enjoy that? Well, it was because that I actually enjoyed helping people have those types of going from conflict where somebody's angry at you and they want their money back or whatever it is, to being able to help solve their situation and then having both people come away with a very, very positive interaction. And well, why do I like that? And you can keep going. You start to understand how that works. But once you start actually peeling back some of these layers and understanding truly why you enjoy this, that can give you clues as to what some of your strengths are. Because very, very often you don't enjoy things you're just flat out terrible at. That's except for golf. Most people like golf, but most people are really bad at it. So that's the one exception. But what did you like? And then here's the second question I want you to ask yourself too. What were you really good at? What did you consider yourself pretty good at? And do the exact same thing. What was it about that thing that I was pretty good at? Well, I was pretty good. I was working with one of my customers last night, one of our members in our one stop. And she said, well, I'm really good at spreadsheets. And I asked her a little bit about, what was it that you're particularly good at spreadsheets? Why do you think you're good at that? And then we got to, after a couple of that type of question, we got to, well, here's what she's really amazing at. She's really amazing at taking all of this information and being able to compile it and being able to keep track of it in a way that most people just can't even fathom. And, that's what came out of getting, being really good at spreadsheets. So I want you to be able to do this because often the past is the best clue to what it is that is your future. And this job really brings all that stuff, or excuse me, this exercise really brings all that stuff together. This tool brings all that stuff together very, very nicely, and is so ridiculously simple. So that is tool number one. Now you can take that and be able to do that right after that, or just as we're thinking about it, get one job in mind. You can kind of do a little bit of that right now. So here's tool number 2. I call them ridiculously good questions. And there's thousands of really good questions out there. I've got a whole bunch of my favorites, and I've included a small amount of those right here. But one of the things I'll tell you too is if you're on this workshop, I'm going to send you a copy of our guide to helping you figure it out. And it's got 10 of these really great questions inside of it. So don't worry, you'll get a copy of that, or you can frantically take notes too. So some of these questions, what do you love enough to do for free? Or what are you already doing? So like in my case, I looked back and it's like, hey, and it seems obvious now, but it wasn't obvious at the time. I was going and meeting some of these people for coffee. And I was going in and having these type of interactions with people, and I was giving them career advice. And it's like, hey, I really enjoy that. But at the time, it's like, oh, that's no big deal. That's something I do, and I get free coffee out of it, right? So that's something I was already doing. And you might be like, Scott, I'm not meeting anybody for coffee, giving them career advice. That's not what I'm telling you. Instead, I'm telling you to look at those things that you're already doing, that you already enjoy, that you are potentially even doing for free, um, or the things that you do love enough that you would do them for free. And that again can give you clues. And I've done this stuff for a while, so again, looking back, it does seem painfully obvious that that was a big thing in my book. But there's something that a year from now is probably going to be painfully obvious to you too. That how come I didn't see that? It was right there in front of me. I was already doing it. And that's usually where a lot of this stuff comes from. Most people have it in their mind that they're going to discover, what it is that they really enjoy doing, what their strengths are, and it's going to be something completely different that they've never heard of before. It's going to come out of the sky, and there's going to be unicorns and rainbows and all kinds of stuff. And that's not how it happens. Instead, very often looking in the past, and that's what some of these questions help with. So what does everyone compliment you on? And I love this because usually when working with coaching clients, what happens again and again and again is, I start talking to them and I'll ask a question similar to this, or they'll say, well, people always tell me that I'm a really great communicator, or I'm really good at public speaking, or whatever it happens to be. But that's no big deal. That's what they say after that. And but everybody else is picking up on it, and people are actually saying stuff to you about it. And you don't think it's a big deal because it comes naturally to you, where they're looking at it going, man, I wish that I could do that. And that's kind of how it works. These are some of these things. If you're looking at your strengths, especially your signature strengths, some of these come through nature, some of these come through nurture, some of these come through development over time, but and exposure over time. But these are the things that, for whatever reason they're there, they come fairly naturally to you. It's just becoming aware of specifically what those are, and then getting those clues that are going to lead you to them for yourself. Now, this takes a little bit of time and a little bit of thought to be able to get on, but love that question. What does everyone compliment you on? What activities give you the most satisfaction? Now, I chose the word activities, and I've seen variations of this question, but you can look at it a different way too. And just in general, what gives you the most satisfaction when you're doing something? What are the things that you do that give you the most satisfaction? If you look back on the last year and think about some of those different times, what are the times where you had the most satisfaction? And you've got to think about what that is for yourself, right? So those are great things to be able to do. Now, there's plenty more questions in it. Like I told you, I'll send you an actual guide that has even more questions right there for you. But I want to give you another set of tools here. We've only got a limited amount of time, and I want to make sure I get through all these things so that you've got the best possible opportunity to be able to identify what is going to be really, really good for you so that you can get to your decision soon. Now, the third thing is not specifically StrengthsFinder, but assessments. So assessments can be really, really, really good, or really, 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 really bad. Now, here's what I mean by that. Assessments can be good if, one, it's a good assessment, but really bad if you think that it's going to give you the answer. So there's some assessments out there that literally tell you what type of job to go get. Basically, it takes some personality inventories and things like that, and then it tells you what type of job you need to go get. You need to be an accountant because blah blah blah. And those assessments aren't really that great. A lot of times they're really not accurate. Instead, I really like the assessments that, again, can give you clues to some of the things that are naturally and authentically you. And one of the ones that does a really great job, and you may have heard of it, you've probably heard of it, it's gotten very, very popular in the last 2-3 years especially, but it's called StrengthsFinder 2.0. And this is actually a book in combination with that assessment. And I'll tell you that guide that I mentioned earlier, it's got links and notes on this stuff, so you'll get a copy of that too. So StrengthsFinder, what I love about it is it actually puts you in, it gives you your top 5, not just top strength necessarily, but top 5 strengths, and allows you to understand the definition. So you can read through it and be like, yeah, I totally understand that. Or yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with that piece, but then it allows you to be able to think through it and understand, where it's coming from. And then you can start to use those things as clues as to what you should be doing. So I've found, after I've talked to an awful lot of people about StrengthsFinder, that it seems to be very, very accurate. When people are coming away from that assessment and looking at the results, very, very often they're like, yeah, that was very, very, very close to right on. So that's part of the reason I like it too, just because again and again and again, I had really, really good experiences with it, and it helps cut past the chase. It helps save you some time. So it's typically around, I think it's like $17 or $20 or something like that. But I found it's $20 that's well worth it because it's can save you a whole bunch of this other work. And then you can start moving towards that decision much, much faster. So my personal results, for example, are ideation, input, futuristic, command, and achiever. And they've got different definitions that go along with these things. Futuristic, I'm just a very future focused person. I don't really care what happened in the past. I don't really care what happened yesterday. That's gone. I can't do anything about that. I want to talk about what's going to happen 10 years from now. I want to talk about what we're going to be doing. That's very much how I've built Happen to Your Career too. So, you know, you can figure those out for what those are yourself. So I love that as a tool. I'm actually going to give you two more assessments that can help you cut through and save you some of that time of trying to struggle and figure out particularly what your strengths are and what you are, what resonates with you. So one is the passion test, and this is not the same way. Strengths finders, it's you go online, you take the test, and then you get your results, it prints out, and everything like that. The passion test doesn't function like that. It's a book, and as you read the book, it guides you through the process. But again, very, very good. It forces you to think about some of these different things and gives you a little bit of that guided process, and gets you to some of these things that you enjoy. And I would often term those as signature strengths. They talk about it in forms of passion, but the authors do a really, really, really nice job with that. So personality profile, specifically the DISC profile, is the one that I like the best. And there's a lot out there. There's the MBTI, there's True Colors, there's a lot of different types of personality profiles on the market. But this DISC profile I especially like because its results are very simple and people understand them intuitively. And that's important, because if you're going to use the information, you got to understand the information, and you got to understand how it fits together and works with you, right? So if you don't have that, then it's kind of a waste of time, waste of space. It's nice, but it's more like your strengths finders, where you actually get a printout, you get here's what it says after you take this test type thing. So really, really good. We often have guided people to 48days.com. And again, there's links to all this stuff in the guide that we'll send you after this. That way you can find it if you wanted to purchase this stuff. So now this is the guide that I was talking about. You'll get a copy in your email. I'll make sure that you get one of those shortly after. You'll arrive a little bit later tonight. Now, the HTYC profile. So this is the term that we made up. I was trying to figure out a name for it as I was working with all these different people. And it's like, you know what? You almost got to build a profile of exactly what it is that you want. And you got to be able to identify all of these different areas. And, you can use those in order to create a measuring stick, so that you can evaluate opportunities. And it started out thinking about it that way, and then evolved over time. And now we call it the HTYC profile. So this is where you really get some of the hard edges of the puzzle, and in different areas. And we've broken it into 5 different areas. I've seen this concept in a couple of different places, and sometimes there's 7 or 4 or whatever. I've split it into 5 just based on how I've worked with people in the past and what I've seen work again and again and again. So usually split it into, what are the areas of family, social relationships, what are those things that you want? And that's really what this is all about. This is identifying what you want and what you need in these different areas. Because if you don't identify what it is that you want and need, you're never going to be able to get to what it is that you want and need. And I'll say that again, because that's ridiculously simple, but it's also very, very, very important. If you don't take the time to understand what it is that you want and what it is that you need in your career, then there's no hope whatsoever that you're ever going to be able to make that happen. It's just, it's not going to be possible. Right. So, this is how you're going to make that happen. And thinking about it from a perspective of, okay, you've got to identify what's the environment, your location, culture, and what I mean by that is, what type of environment, where do you want to live, what type of neighborhood is important to you, what type of culture in the company is important to you, all of those different things. Financial, this is sometimes one of the easiest ones for people, because you can put it to a hard number. What is it that I actually need, and what is it that I want? And personal development and growth, when you think about that, what do you want to focus on personally? What areas do you want to learn in? What areas do you want to grow in? What do you want to develop in? And how will you do that? How do you like doing that? Is that books, events, courses, coaching? What types of opportunities are going to allow you to have that? Whether that is building a business, or building a business on the side, or in a job. What types of opportunities are going to allow you to have those things? But first, you can't look at those opportunities until you understand what it is that you want. It's useless looking at those opportunities, because you're not going to know if it matches up with what you want, right? So, and I put wellness, fitness, and just overall health in here, particularly because for those people that really are serious about making sure that they're doing work that fits them, and making sure that they're doing work that they want, that is going to require you to be at the top of your game. And when I say top of your game, I'm talking about your performance level. So whether you're owning a business, or building something on the side, or whether you are, looking for your dream job, you're going to have to be a top performer there. That's just reality. And, it's also reality that top performers pay attention at least a little bit to their body and to their health. So, that's something that has to be in there too, whether you think it should be or not. That's one thing that I've observed and added in over the years. Now, here is another thing to think about. What are the minimums in each area, and what is it that you really want? And that's a really good way to be able to go through this. What are those things that you must have, or those things that you need? And that's what I'm considering the minimums to be. What are those things that you must have and you need for each one of these areas? And again, financial, it might be really, really easy. Well, I know that, or I figured out that I need, $2,400 to run my household, or $5,000 to run my household, or whatever it is. And that's my minimum. I've got to have that. Um, and what I'd really want to be making, in the next 2 to 3 years here, I really want to be making, $150,000 a year, or whatever it happens to be for you. Um, you can go through in each one of these. Same thing for family and social and relationships, and same thing for environment. And for me, I'll tell you a little bit about how I got to HTYC. I went through this exact same process, and I determined that, hey, with family and social and relationships, one of the things that I felt I really needed and wanted is, I wanted to be able to have the freedom and flexibility to build relationships, and to be there for my family, even for the small things. And this isn't necessarily the same for everybody, but I really wanted to, I had a situation 3 years ago where I was going to go on a flight, and I got off a little bit early, and I went down to my daughter's soccer. Soccer is soccer tot, so it's like little kids, right? They had hula hoops there for some reason. They're not even playing on a field. It's little kids soccer. But I looked around and realized that I was the only dad there. And that was the point in time where I realized that, hey, this is something I want to be able to do all the time. So that became one of the things that I felt that I needed to have as I looked at those opportunities. And I realized that the only way I was going to be able to get that was, either working at home and telecommuting, or, owning my own business. And, that was part of the process I went through. Same thing for financial. My wife and I had identified various financial goals, and the only way that we were going to be able to reach them in the time frame that we wanted to reach them was going to be owning our own business. And same thing for personal development and growth. The types of people, or the relationships and the types of people that I wanted to be around, and cause for my growth. I wasn't going to be able to do that in some of the companies that had options. So that was it for me. It's going to be completely different for you, and it's different for every single person that I've worked with. So what's good for me isn't necessarily good for you. And that's what you have to be able to do. So you've got to go through and choose, what are those minimums, what are those things that you must have, and what are those things that you really want. and define those in each area and be specific. Get it down to, like where I was talking about my daughter at soccer, like get it down to that specific as to what it is and why you want it. And all of a sudden you can get a whole bunch of clarity from just doing this alone and going through and filling out the profile in what it is that you want. Now, some people get it kind of scared to put what they really want. They qualify in their head. Your brain does this automatically, whether you realize it or not. Your brain does a whole bunch of this stuff automatically for you. It'll tell you, well, that's not realistic, so don't put it down. And then it doesn't even make it to your pencil, so you don't actually write it down, right? So, that's something you're going to have to reconcile with a little bit. That's why I suggest to start with those minimums as you're filling this out. But go through, make those minimums actually happen, and then go back through and then put what you really want. And sometimes it's easier to scale up from there. And after you've gotten down that need out of the way, what your brain feels like you must have, then you can start thinking bigger. And then you can start thinking about what would be really great. And if some of these other things, those constraints weren't an object, what would I really want in these areas? And as you've noticed, all 5 of these are completely impacted by your career. So that's why we've chosen these 5 particular areas, because your career, what career you choose, what job you choose, or business you choose, or anything else, is going to dictate what you can do in some of these areas. Okay, so that's the profile. And again, profile is it's something that most people will never, ever, ever take the time to be able to do. And that alone, if you did nothing else, if you didn't even worry about your strengths as much, and just did the profile alone, it's not the easiest way to go about it, but that would give you an amazing amount of clarity if you just simply took the time to understand what you wanted in some of these other areas and not even worried so much about the job. Um, and that's ridiculous, how that actually works, and I'll help you understand why it works that way too. So when you're talking about making your decision, that's the third thing and final thing here that we're gonna talk about, but it's the most critical one. And I want you to understand how you can actually get to this decision and how that works. So you can't even hope to make it happen if you haven't gone through and done the first 2 things. Like if you don't understand what you're great at, and you don't understand what it is that you actually want in other areas of your life, then you're not going to be able to figure out what you want. You can still make a decision. I mean, you can still make a decision. You just might not know what you want. And then you're going to be right back where you're at right now, in a job where you are not entirely happy with it. And maybe it's a good job and everything, but you're not entirely happy with it. Otherwise you wouldn't be here watching this thing or listening to it. Right. So, you're not fully sure of what it is that you want, and when you think about it, it's a little bit overwhelming. And I don't want you to be in that place time and time again and again. Career, job change after job change, or you go and you start a business and realize that's not the right thing for you. So instead, something else to think about is, first of all, the power of making a decision. So after you've got that profile, after you've spent the time doing that, the next step of the process is really to be able to get together, options that match up with it. And that's the part that people struggle with. I find that again and again and again, that initially people come to me because they can't figure out how to put together those options. They can't quite see how to connect what it was that they want with what it is that is out there and available or could be available, and what potential they have. And the part that sounds funny and the part that's kind of odd in the way that it works is you won't fully know until you go through that work and define what it is that you want, because that can completely change what those options are and available. And then what you can do is you can start, as you've gotten that profile, you can actually piece it down to just 2, 3, 4, 5 different options that you think would line up really, really well. And then it's a lot easier to pick from those 2, 3, 4, or 5 options. Often I have people choose 3, and then from those 3, be able to make their decision. And here's the funny thing about a decision. First of all, Ralph Waldo Emerson, as you can see up here, it says, once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. All of a sudden, it becomes much, much easier to move along the path, because now you can see where the path actually is. And that gives you an insane amount of power. Now, the same thing can happen too, by going through that clarity process. And the reality is too that if you make an imperfect decision, if you make a decision that doesn't line up 100%, um, that's okay. It's still moving you much, much closer intentionally to what it is that you want. Or if you realize that, hey, here's where I really want to go, but what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to have a couple of steps along the way, then still, that's a much, much, much better place to be than essentially randomly job chasing or making incremental moves where you've decided, yeah, I don't really want this. I'm going to go over to this next job over here and hope that the grass is greener. So it's a much, much more efficient way to make job changes. Plus, it'll actually allow you to get to that goal of what it is that you want. Now, here's the other reason why the decision is so important, and actually, particularly why the profile is so important too. Have you ever purchased a car and then you drive it for a few days and then all of a sudden you notice that the exact same car is everywhere? And you've probably had that happen, or you've heard of, that type of situation. And this is called selection bias by psychologists. There's a couple other names for it too, but one of those names is selection bias. And it's a conditional natural response in your brain to zero in on the information that your brain thinks is relevant to you, and it filters out everything else. And that's really what this is, and that's really what it does. And you can't necessarily help it. It's difficult to help it, so you might as well use it to your advantage. And that's exactly what I'm going to teach you to do here. So once you've got this profile, once you've taken the time to be able to fill out that profile, one of the ways that you can actually start to get those options and start to connect what you want to various different options is, by taking advantage of selection bias. You remember the puzzle analogy, right? That's what we started out with. And here's the story of how that thing actually happened, how I got to using a puzzle for that analogy. I had intentionally identified that I needed to get a good analogy that helps people think about this career stuff, because it's really abstract and it's really kind of complicated, and it's really difficult, right? And then one day, I was sitting on the floor with Grayson, who's my 4-year-old. He's my little boy, and we were putting together puzzles. And this is this is apparently a regular thing in my house, I'm just realizing. But I was trying to teach him how to put together the puzzle by starting with the corner pieces. He was grabbing all over the place, right? And it wasn't working. Small wonder, right? And I was telling him, hey, you've got to start with these pieces here. These are the corner pieces. You got to start with these pieces. These are the edge pieces. He didn't quite grasp what the edge pieces were at first. And he's like, oh, I want to use this one. But then it was like, whoa, that would work perfectly. And the reason that happened is because I'd intentionally identified that I needed that type of analogy, not a puzzle analogy, but an analogy to be able to make this happen. And then my brain or subconsciously is continuously searching for relevant information because I'd made a decision about, what it was that I wanted. And that's very much how your brain works. So again, you can use that to your advantage. And same thing for some of my other career changes. When I got the job doing HR with Target, there were lots of other jobs out there that I had the opportunity to interview for and probably could have gotten an offer with, but I wanted something specifically in HR. And I started talking to Target, and they actually initially told me, yeah, we don't put people without HR experience in this type of role. And most people at that point would have said, hey, well, yeah, I'll do anything so I can get in the door, and then you can make me an HR person later on. And and I've sat in thousands of interviews, so I've heard that type of response again and again and again. Instead, if you've got that type of clarity, here's what it allowed me to do. It allowed me to say, yeah, well, okay, what am I doing here? And then that opened up a whole different conversation, because I had that level of clarity about what I wanted. And then, they could tell that through the rest of the conversation. And then they gave me a job offer in HR after they don't do that, as they said. So again, here's some examples of ways that, by going through and identifying and being clear about what it is that you want will allow you to expose yourself to different situations. And then start to identify naturally, just by using, just by the way that your brain works, start to identify those things, because you're going to be going along and be like, well, geez, that would be perfect. That would be perfect. But if you haven't done all the work to identify what it is that you want, then you're going to walk right by it and you're going to miss it. So I don't want that to happen to you. And once you make that decision, you can do some pretty amazing things. Remember Maggie? Told you about Maggie at the very beginning. Well, once she made the decision she wanted to do learning and development, and once she decided, hey, I like all of these other things here that happen to be in my own company. She decided she really didn't want to leave, so she started talking to the people that worked at her organization, and guess what? She actually got a job in the same company. They she didn't have any experience. She didn't have any of those other things, all those reasons people throw out that they can't get jobs, whatever it is. She didn't have any of that stuff. She simply made a decision and then started talking to people about it and started looking for those opportunities that could line up with the things that she wanted. So again, just another case in point. Now, I just went through a whole bunch of stuff here. So um, I wanna quickly recap here, and I want you to start with your strengths. We already talked about that. You've got to start with your strengths. And I gave you some tools, three really really good tools that you can use on your own, or even working with somebody else, that jobs exercise. So go back and you can complete the jobs exercise, look at some of those questions, or even, purchase some of the assessments. That's optional, but I've had really good experiences with those too. And a lot of my customers have had the same experiences. And then you need to go back and you need to build that profile describing specifically what you want and those minimums and what you really want. So complete the H2YC profile, and we've actually got a link to a sheet that you can download inside that guide that I'll send you. And then you can actually list out those options. Once you've done that, you'll start to be able to put together options that perfectly match with what it is that you want, or are a very, very close match with what you want. And then from there, you can make your decision. You can get those onto a short list, and then you can start getting going. It can literally be that simple. But the reason it doesn't happen for most people is they've never gone through that type of process and never gone through and really accurately identified those things that they want. Most people have spent, more time more time in watching TV on an average day than they have, really thinking about and defining in the ways that we're talking about, and specifically the ways that we're talking about, defining what it is that they want. So, if you've liked what you heard, and if you want an even better way and faster way, and you want some really specific help getting to what it is that you want, I promised people that I would give you guys a sneak peek at our beta course. And it's called Figure Out What Fits. And it's a 4-week course that allows people to get through every single piece of this. We even use a couple of those exercises that I talked about in the course, and we give you step-by-step help to be able to go through and come out the other side with a decision. In fact, we guarantee that you'll come out with a decision that you're excited about. And that's exactly how it works. We guide you step by step. So here's how it works. We give you 4 weekly live classes. And in addition to those classes, there's work and exercises that goes along with it. In week number 1, we actually go through and we get you to what your signature strengths are and identifying what will make you truly successful. So this is really, really cool. Because again, most people haven't done this, don't really understand exactly what they are, but that gives you a whole bunch of power to be able to move forward. And then week number 2, we talk you through the happen to your career mindset. And specifically, we want you to be able to stop thinking like the rest of the world that has crappy jobs that they don't really like all that much, or that they want something more, right? Because that's where most of the people are at. And what HTYCers do that is different from the rest of the world, and how to start. And then we teach you to be able to incorporate routines that'll make you successful. And I'm going to call it the art of thinking big. And trust me, it's way bigger than what you're currently thinking. And we want you to be able to understand how to use this line of thinking to your advantage, and not just have it be dreams, not just have it, be something else that never actually happens, but instead be able to incorporate it into your own reality. And then week 3, we teach you how to be able to design your life, and a little bit with the profile concept, but we go in deep dive into what you want and what you don't want, and have you clarify exactly that. And for both your work and the rest of your life. We touched a lot on the rest of your life here. We didn't really get into a ton of what work specifically, but then we play matchmaker on week 4. Week 4 is really all about helping you match up those opportunities and possibilities with what it is that you want to be doing. And, we want you to rule out 99.99999% of the available options out there and really focus in on the things that would be really, really, really good for you. And then at the end of that, we get you to the point where you've got those options and you can actually make that decision and start moving forward. And we've got some other things that we've thrown in to make it particularly helpful. So that week by week interactive workbook and guide that I was talking about, that actually allows you to go through and come prepared to the class sessions and get the most out of the sessions because you've worked through some of the stuff in advance, and then the real learning will take place. The real putting it all together will take place in the class sessions each week for those 4 weeks. And then also, so that you can get help in between the class sessions for anything that you need, you've got access to a private Facebook group. And this is really pretty cool because you're also going to get to meet other people in the exact same situation. And that's one of the funny things about this process is when you go through it with other people that understand exactly where you're at, it is so much easier. And I didn't, if you would ask me, 6 or 7 years ago, I would have underestimated. I wouldn't have told you that. I didn't understand how powerful that piece is as well. So going through it in a class-like experience where you're part of a group and everybody understands exactly what you're going through, it makes a ridiculous difference. So that's why we've put it into this format, because remember, I told you that we actually put together a long time ago, we put together a short email course where people could get some of this information. It doesn't go over everything, but it gets people a good start. And what we found was most people weren't making it happen because they needed these other things along the way. They needed some of that accountability, and they needed some of that, that group type exposure to be able to make this happen. So that's why we're super excited about this beta class. And, I want to recap for you here really quick. That's the private Facebook group, which it helps to get help in between the classes. That's worth $199. In fact, actually, we've got a similar group that we charge $49 a month for, the Work You Love One Stop. And, also those classes, normally coaching, if you work with me on an hourly basis, then I charge $300 an hour. So that's $1,200 if we were to do that separately in a one-off. So these classes allow you to be able to not pay the full $1,200 for that. And the workbook and exercises, those are worth $199. Plus, for people specifically on this workshop, I'm throwing in something extra. So if you get this right away, I'm going to throw on a 30-minute call with me that can be used at any point in time during the class for any place that you get stuck or just need some additional help. I'll actually coach you through that. And all of that stuff normally would come to $1,648. That's a pretty spendy price for all of those different things. We're not going to charge that much. Normally we would, if this weren't a beta class and this weren't the first time that we had done it, we would probably be charging between $400 and $500 for it. We're not going to charge that either, though. It's actually just $197, and there's several different reasons why. You're going to ask, why are we doing it so low? And it's because this is the first time offering and testing the course. We want to get feedback, and it's more important for us to get that feedback and tweak it throughout the entire thing. And we want to come out on the other end with some really amazing testimonials and some really amazing transformations for people. And then also because since this is the first time around, I wanted to make it lower those. We want you to be able to happen in your career. Like that's the reality. We want to be able to get some people that are looking specifically for results, some of those results. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to be able to go and click on the yellow button below this webinar, or you can go to happentoyourcareer.com/fit. And I want you to take a look and determine whether this is a great fit for you. Now, as I mentioned before, the bonus 30-minute coaching offer ends tonight at midnight. But if you get it before then you can take advantage of that 30 minutes with me to be able to make sure that you've got a little bit extra help that you need. And here's my guarantee. You are going to reach a decision that you're excited about by the end of the course, or I simply give you your money back. And again, I do it that way because we're very results focused. And if you know anything about happening to your career, we really want to be able to, we're all about delivering those results, or in this case, it's free. And it's because I want you to have the same feeling where that I have, where when you wake up in the morning, you're just ridiculously excited to be doing work that fits you and that you enjoy. And because I know that unless you do the hard work of figuring this stuff out, it's going to stop you. And I don't want you to spend another 2 or 3 or 4 or 12 months right where you're at now. And that's not a great place to be. It's just not. I've been there, and it's not all that fun. And unless unless you take some action, that's what's going to happen. So, in fact, I'd encourage you to take a look back over the last 2 months, and um, how much have you been able to move the needle on exactly figuring out what fits you. And if it's not very much, if it hasn't been as much as what you're wanting, then you're probably a good candidate for this beta course. Or if you're finally ready to do the hard work and you need somebody to hold you accountable and step you through this entire process, then this is probably a great course for you. Or, if you spent a long time wondering how to connect your skills and how to connect your strengths to work that you want, then this is probably a no-brainer for you. And the course meets weekly, 6:30 p.m. So same time as what we're at now, exact same time. And it's hour long each week for each the session. In fact, the 6 live sessions begin Monday on February 9th, and they'll also be recorded for you as you watch. We strongly recommend that you actually attend, but they'll be recorded if for some reason you can't make it for a week. And you know something else to consider too at the exact same time is when we meet up, you'll be able to get questions answered right there on the spot as well. So I want to open it up here for any questions that you have. What questions can I answer for you? And if there are any questions, you can go ahead and log in on the chat and let me know. Another place that you can ask questions either about the topic that we're talking about or about this course, which by the way just went live today. And I also have to tell you that we've already filled about half the spots, so we've only got half the seats actually left. So it will sell out. And it's either going to fully end this Friday. That's when we will actually close everything up, or whenever those spots sell out. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and you can log right in, drop us a comment, and I'll be happy to answer questions. Or you can email me at Scott, I don't even know my own email address, scott@happentoyourcareer.com. And I'd love to be able to help you out with any emails. But go over there, check it out. Let me know if there's anything that I can help you out with, either questions wise or getting you to work that you love. Obviously, that's what we do around here. Thank you so very much. I really very much appreciate you attending our workshop, and I hope that you were able to take away just one or a couple of things that you can apply immediately. So if there's no questions, I'm going to say goodbye and good night. I really hope to see you in on the inside of that course. And again, drop me an email if there's anything that I could do for you, regardless of whether it has to do with this class or anything else. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. We'll talk to you later.